Enola.
Now, where to begin? My mother named me Enola, which backwards spells alone. And yet, we were always together. And it was wonderful. She was my whole world. Which leads me on to the second thing you need to know. A week ago, I awoke. Mother? To find that my mother was missing, and she did not return. I'm presently on the way to collect my brothers, Mycroft and Sherlock. Yes, Sherlock Holmes. The famous detective, my genius brother. He will have all the answers.
Enola.
Where's your hat and your gloves?
Well, I have a hat. Just makes my head itch. And I have no gloves.
My God.
A wild woman brought up a wild child who will make her acceptable for society.
She seems intelligent.
There are two paths you can take, Enola. Yours, or the path others choose for you.
It is time to find my mother. The game is afoot. If I have to stay hidden from my brothers, I must become something unexpected. A lady.
You've progressed nicely.
Is she safe?
She's our company.
I'm Viscount Tewkesbury.
A useless boy.
You have to help me. I'm not ready to die on a train.
I'm not ready to die at all, and I wasn't going to before I met you. What are you planning, Mother?
She always had a reason for everything. Her own way of doing things. Perhaps she wants to change the world.
Perhaps it's a world that needs changing. Come on! Unlike most well-bred ladies, I was never taught to embroider. I was taught to watch and listen. I was taught to fight. I'm coming to find you, Mother.
You don't know how to embroider.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This is going to be my new Sherlock Holmes trailer for Henry Cavill's new Sherlock Holmes. It's called Enola Holmes because Millie Bobby Brown is playing that character. I'll explain what's going on and where it fits into the larger Sherlock Holmes canon because most of you will remember Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock Holmes or Robert Downey Jr.'s Sherlock Holmes. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. We'll do a new Amazon giveaway. All you have to do to enter is be a subscriber and leave your favorite version of Sherlock on the video. If you've been a subscriber of my channel for a couple years now, you probably remember I did episode videos for the Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock series. It seems like it's been a long time, but it actually hasn't been that long. I will rank all of the Sherlocks, but this is basically like your big Netflix crossover between The Witcher and Stranger Things. Sam Claflin is playing Mycroft Holmes and Helena Bonham Carter is playing her mother. But this is a movie, it's not a TV series. There was some confusion about that when they first dropped this trailer. The reason the movie is called Enola Holmes is because the movie is based on a more recent Sherlock Holmes book series from the perspective of Enola Holmes' character, the Holmes sister. The movie's plot is taken from a story called The Case of the Missing Marquis, and the series itself spans 6 novels covering the period between Enola's 14th and 15th birthdays, so she's like the 14-year-old sister of Sherlock Holmes and Mycroft Holmes. The basic premise of the movie is that Enola Holmes' mother, Helena Bonham Carter, seemingly disappears, so she calls her brothers Sherlock and Mycroft Holmes for help, who just kind of dismiss her as this unimportant 14-year-old girl. Like, you're a little girl in Victorian London, go be a little girl. As you see during the trailer, they try to send her off to a boarding school where she won't cause them any problems because Sherlock Holmes is in full Sherlock Holmes mode, being the detective that everybody knows. When the events of this movie pick up, he's already been active as a detective for a long time. He's become very famous. But Enola Holmes bolts, tries to find her mother on her own, and then starts running into a lot of people from the Sherlock Holmes stories, like Lestrade. She winds up getting caught up in a case that Sherlock is currently working on involving a Viscount. She finds him, that's the young boy that's running around with her in the trailer, the Viscount that Sherlock has been looking for. So as they're busy trying to escape the people that tried to kidnap them, she finds out what happens to her mother and then goes on to a career as a detective on her own. I don't know if they plan on doing any sequels to this. I think it just depends on how successful it is and how much people like Henry Cavill as Sherlock Holmes. I'm really fascinated to see what his version of Sherlock is going to be like. But you might remember that in the original Arthur Conan Doyle Sherlock Holmes canon, there is no mention of a Holmes sister. Then they reveal the existence of their secret sister who's been institutionalized in a maximum security prison her whole life, and she's so brilliant that she makes Mycroft seem dumb by comparison. So this Enola Holmes with Millie Bobby Brown is sort of a twist on that conceit. Henry Cavill's version of Sherlock, per this book series that it's based on, is as eccentric as you'd expect Sherlock to be, but he's still the most personable of the brothers, or the Holmes children. And Mycroft might be smarter, but socially he doesn't have a clue to make as many Sherlock puns as possible. And at least within the context of these Enola Holmes stories that the movie is based on, the 14-year-old Enola is sort of a rising star, not quite as brilliant or experienced as Sherlock yet, but showing signs of promise. And because she's a 14-year-old girl, she still has to contend with all the awkward comedy of being a 14-year-old girl in Victorian-era London. So it's very much Eleven from Stranger Things, but make it Sherlock Holmes. Even though the Benedict Cumberbatch version of Sherlock was a contemporary series set during present day, they did do a Christmas special where they did an episode as if it were taking place during the original period of the Sherlock Holmes novels back during Victorian-era London. I think if you're a fan of Henry Cavill and Millie Bobby Brown on Stranger Things, this is probably something for you. If you're a hardcore Sherlock Holmes fan, you'll probably be able to spot all the non-canonical stuff a mile away. So this movie is a very, very loose adaptation of the canon. There are some Easter eggs for a lot of Sherlock Holmes, Arthur Conan Doyle stuff, but the actual stories that the movie is taken from are not canon themselves. I haven't seen much of Henry Cavill's non-Justice League Superman work recently besides The Witcher Netflix, but I did like him during that, and it is fun to see him do other stuff. I think when he signed with Netflix for The Witcher Netflix, they were like, please do other things with us, other big projects. So you'll probably see Henry Cavill show up on more Netflix movies every once in a while. They are busy filming The Witcher Netflix Season 2 right now. I just posted The Witcher Season 2 teaser trailer because there was news about Jason Momoa joining The Witcher Netflix. I'll add a link for that in the description and at the end of the video here. I think Millie Bobby Brown is definitely a rising star. I kind of wanted her to do a young Princess Leia Star Wars Disney Plus series after Stranger Things was over, but I think Lucasfilm is kind of staying away from doing something like that for a while. Maybe eventually we'll see her show up in the Star Wars movies. And speaking of Stranger Things, they're busy finishing filming Stranger Things Season 4 right now. I just did a Stranger Things Season 5 video because the Duffer Brothers confirmed that they would be doing Stranger Things Season 5, so I'll also add a link for that at the end of this, if you're a big Stranger Things fan. But just ranking all the versions of Sherlock recently so far. So we have Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock, who's totally solid. He himself in real life is just as eccentric as the Sherlock Holmes character, so it's a perfect fit. Game of Shadows wasn't quite as good as the first movie he did, but they are still planning on making a Sherlock 3 movie at some point in the next few years. They've already announced it, but I don't know when that's actually going to premiere. But Benedict Cumberbatch, I think, is still the superior version of a Sherlock story, mostly because they had many, many hours to develop that character through 4 seasons of the show. Some of the seasons were a little disappointing, but at the end of the day, I think if you're looking for the maximum version of Sherlock, he's the one. That was why that scene during Avengers Infinity War with them facing off was so much fun. Of course, it would have been too much for them to actually mention Sherlock during that, but it was so much fun just watching those 2 different versions of Sherlock have that gunslinger moment stand off with each other.
If we don't do our jobs.
What is your job exactly besides making balloon animals?
Protecting your reality, douchebag.
Okay, guys.
Both of them are fans of each other's portrayal of Sherlock Holmes. Robert Downey Jr. was a fan of the Sherlock series, and Benedict Cumberbatch, very graciously, was also a fan of the Sherlock Holmes movies that Robert Downey Jr. did. The Henry Cavill Sherlock Holmes movie is going to be dropping September 23rd. Stranger Things Season 4 is probably going to be released sometime towards the end of next year, as is probably The Witcher Season 2. But they haven't officially confirmed release dates for those other 2 series, but I will do videos for those when we get more information. Everyone click here for that Witcher Season 2 teaser trailer, and click here for that Stranger Things Season 4 trailer and Easter eggs. Thank you so much for watching. Everyone stay safe. I'll see you guys tonight.